The small town of Oakhaven was a quilt of quiet streets and ancient oaks, stitched together by the gentle murmur of the Willow Creek. But for Elara Vance, Oakhaven was defined not by its sleepy charm during the day, but by the boundless canvas it offered each night. Here, miles away from the city's glowing pulse, the heavens unfurled in a breathtaking display of cosmic artistry, and Elara was its most devoted admirer. Her home, a cozy cottage with a perpetually steaming kettle on the stove and shelves overflowing with well-loved books, sat on the edge of town, atop a gentle rise. From her back garden, where herbs grew wild, and a creaky wooden swing hung from a venerable oak, she had an unobstructed view of the night sky. But her true sanctuary was a little further out, a 10-minute bicycle ride along a winding country lane, the Oakhaven Astronomical Observatory. It wasn't grand, not like the colossal observatories she'd read about in textbooks. The Oakhaven Observatory was a charmingly rustic affair, a weathered brick building crowned with a modest, dome-shaped roof that could be rotated by hand. Inside, a sturdy, antique telescope, lovingly maintained, pointed its lens at the universe. Elara, a volunteer curator and the unofficial keeper of its celestial secrets, spent most evenings there, guiding school groups, hosting stargazing events for tourists, or simply losing herself in the silent wonder of the cosmos. She was 28, with eyes the color of deep moss and hair the shade of burnished copper, usually tied back in a practical braid. Her hands, often smudged with chalk dust from the observatory's blackboard, or smelling faintly of lavender from her garden, moved with a quiet efficiency. Elara found solace in the predictable dance of the stars, a comforting counterpoint to the unpredictable currents of human emotion. She loved people, in her own gentle way, but the vast, silent majesty of space offered a profound sense of perspective that nothing else could. This particular Tuesday evening, a whisper of autumn was already in the air, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. The sky was a velvet tapestry, newly washed by a brief afternoon shower, and the stars, like freshly scattered diamonds, were beginning to pierce through the deepening twilight. Elara had just finished polishing the observatory's main lens, her breath fogging the cool metal for a moment, before she carefully wiped it away. A faint smile touched her lips as she thought of tonight's scheduled meteor shower. It wasn't a major one, but every shooting star was a tiny wish, a fleeting moment of magic. She checked the weather forecast on her phone. Clear skies all night, and then tucked it into the pocket of her worn denim jacket. A sudden jarring sound from outside made her jump. It was the distinct thud of a car door, followed by the crunch of gravel underfoot. The observatory was usually deserted at this hour, save for Elara and the occasional nocturnal creature. Her brow furrowed slightly. Had she forgotten an appointment? A late-arriving tourist? She peered out of the small arched window near the entrance. A sleek, dark sedan, far too modern for Oakhaven's usual vehicles, was parked beside the gravel drive. A figure, tall and broad-shouldered, was making his way towards the observatory's front door. He moved with a purposeful stride, a tablet clutched in one hand, his posture radiating an air of professional seriousness that felt distinctly out of place in her tranquil haven. He reached the heavy oak door and, without knocking, tried the handle. It was, of course, locked. Elara preferred to open it herself, to greet visitors with a friendly smile and a brief introduction to the wonders within. She watched as he frowned, then looked around, his gaze sweeping over the building's ancient brickwork, the slightly peeling paint on the window frames, and the dome above. His expression seemed to shift from mild annoyance to something akin to assessment. Taking a deep breath, Elara unlatched the door and pulled it open, offering her most welcoming smile, though a flicker of unease danced in her stomach. "Good evening," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Can I help you?" The man turned, his eyes a surprising shade of steel gray, meeting hers. He was handsome in a rugged, almost formidable way. Dark hair, slightly too long, fell across his forehead, and a faint 5 o'clock shadow framed a strong jawline. He was wearing a dark suit jacket, loosened at the collar, and a pristine white shirt, a stark contrast to Elara's comfortable, star chart emblazoned t-shirt. He looked like he'd stepped straight out of a city boardroom and somehow materialized in her quiet corner of the world. "Good evening," he replied, his voice a low baritone that resonated with quiet authority. "My apologies, I didn't realize it was still in use. I'm Liam Thorne. From Thorne and Associates. I have an appointment with... Well, I suppose it's the Oakhaven Town Council, but they told me to come directly here to begin my survey. He gestured vaguely at the building. I'm here about the redevelopment project. Ilara's smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion, then dawning apprehension. Redevelopment project, she echoed, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. I'm afraid I don't know anything about a redevelopment project concerning the observatory. I'm Ilara Vance, the volunteer curator, and I assure you the observatory is very much in use. In fact, we have a meteor shower viewing scheduled for tonight. Liam Thorne's steel-gray eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of surprise in their depths. He glanced at the tablet in his hand, then back at her. I see. Well, my apologies again, Ms. Vance. The documents I received stated that the Oakhaven Astronomical Observatory was marked for assessment for potential integration into the new Oakhaven Gateway project. I was under the impression it was largely defunct, or at least underutilized. Underutilized? Ilara felt a prickle of indignation. This observatory has been a cornerstone of this community for 70 years. We host weekly public viewings, school field trips, astronomy clubs, even research projects in collaboration with local universities. It is far from defunct. Liam raised a conciliatory hand, a slight flush rising on his cheeks. My mistake. The initial briefs were incomplete, it seems. My firm specializes in historical preservation and repurposing, Ms. Vance. We work to integrate existing structures into new community developments, ensuring their heritage is respected. He offered a small, hesitant smile that softened his features considerably, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. I assure you, my intention is not to demolish anything. Quite the opposite, usually. His words were meant to be reassuring, but the phrase, Oakhaven Gateway Project and integration, still sent a shiver of unease down Ilara's spine. The observatory wasn't just a building. It was a living, breathing entity, a gateway to other worlds. How could one integrate the infinite expanse of the cosmos into a mere gateway project? Perhaps, Ilara said, trying to keep her voice even, you could tell me more about this Oakhaven Gateway project and why it involves the observatory. I haven't heard anything about it from the council. Liam's expression became more guarded again. I believe the council was planning a public announcement later this week. I was simply here to conduct the initial structural and environmental surveys. But I'm happy to give you a brief overview. He gestured to the side. Perhaps outside. I wouldn't want to interrupt your preparations. Ilara hesitated, then nodded. She stepped out, pulling the door shut behind her but not locking it. The sky was now a deep indigo, the first bright stars winking into existence. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the woods nearby. Liam walked a few paces away, then turned, indicating the rolling fields that surrounded the observatory. The Oakhaven Gateway Project, he began, his voice taking on a more formal presentation-like tone, is an initiative by the town to boost tourism and provide new community amenities. It involves developing this entire area, the old quarry site, the derelict barns, and integrating the existing natural beauty, and apparently, this observatory. He gestured broadly. The plan is to create a multi-purpose visitor center, walking trails, potentially a small eco-resort, and new public spaces, all designed to blend seamlessly with the natural landscape and respect Oakhaven's heritage. Ilara listened, her heart sinking with each detail. A multi-purpose visitor center? An eco-resort? She repeated, the words tasting foreign and unwelcome. But this area is pristine. It's what makes the stargazing here so exceptional. Any new development, any new lights, any added traffic, it would ruin the dark sky conditions. It would destroy what makes this observatory special. Liam ran a hand through his dark hair, a hint of frustration in his posture. Ms. Vance, we are keenly aware of environmental impact. Our designs prioritize sustainable practices, minimal light pollution, and preserving natural habitats. We use dark sky compliant lighting, shield fixtures, and direct light downwards. We specialize in these kinds of sensitive projects. But minimal light pollution is still light pollution, Ilara countered, her voice rising slightly. The whole point of a dark sky preserve, which this area effectively is no light pollution. Even a single new street lamp, a single glow from a window, can obscure the fainter galaxies, the nebulae. It's a delicate balance. The beauty of this place is its wildness, its emptiness, its quiet. How can you integrate that with a resort and a visitor center? He looked at her, his expression a mix of professional patience and genuine bewilderment. Ms. Vance, the town needs development. It needs jobs. It needs revenue. This project is designed to bring economic vitality while enhancing the natural beauty, not destroying it. But at what cost to its soul? Elara asked, her voice softer now, tinged with a deep sadness. The stars are Oak Haven's soul. They are its unique treasure. People come here age because it's quiet, because they can see the Milky Way arching overhead like a luminous river. If you bring the city here even in a sustainable way, you take that away. Liam paused, his gaze sweeping over the darkening landscape, then up at the emerging stars. He had spent his career building, designing, improving. He was accustomed to logical arguments, to balancing budgets and aesthetics. He wasn't used to this level of passionate, almost spiritual, defense of darkness. I understand your concerns, Ms. Vance, he said, his tone softening. And I promise you we will take them seriously. My team includes environmental consultants. We can explore options for light mitigation, perhaps even creating a specific dark zone around the observatory. A dark zone in the middle of a developed area is an oxymoron, Elara said, shaking her head. It's like trying to preserve a single tree in the middle of a clear-cut forest. The ecosystem is gone. She looked up at the sky, where Venus now shone like a brilliant beacon. Tonight, there's a minor meteor shower. Perhaps you could stay and see it. See what you're planning to build around, feel the quiet, understand what you're proposing to change. Liam Thorne looked at his expensive watch, then at her, then back at the sky. He had a flight back to the city in the morning, a packed schedule of meetings. Yet, something in her earnest plea, in the raw emotion in her eyes, resonated with him. He was a man who built, but he also appreciated beauty, even if his appreciation often manifested in clean lines and structural integrity, rather than the ethereal glow of a distant nebula. I have a flight in the morning, he began. It won't last all night, Elara interrupted gently. Just for an hour or so when the Earth passes through the comet's dust trail. The peak is around 10 o'clock. You could see a few just to understand? She looked at him with an intensity that pulled him in. Please, for Oak Haven, for the stars. He hesitated for a long moment, the hum of his city life battling with the quiet invitation of the night. He was an architect, a pragmatist. But he also prided himself on understanding the needs of a community, on designing spaces that resonated with people. And this woman, with her quiet passion for the heavens, was clearly a deeply resonant part of Oak Haven. All right, Liam said, a slow smile finally breaking through his serious facade. An hour, but only if you promise to explain everything to me. The constellations, the meteors, why it all matters so much. Elara's face lit up, a genuine, radiant smile replacing her earlier apprehension. It's a deal, she said, her voice filled with a warmth that surprised him. Come inside. I'll make some tea, and then we'll see what the universe has in store for us. As Elara led him into the observatory, the scent of old wood and stardust seemed to cling to the air. Liam, accustomed to the gleaming steel and glass of modern offices, felt a strange sense of stepping back in time. The main room was circular, dominated by the massive antique telescope, its brass gleaming softly. Around the walls were faded posters of nebulae and galaxies, hand-drawn star charts, and a small, well-worn chalkboard filled with equations and astronomical terms. A pot of chamomile tea was already brewing on a small electric burner in the corner, giving off a comforting aroma. Make yourself at home, Elara said, gesturing to a sturdy wooden bench. I'll just get the tea. Liam watched her as she moved, her movements fluid and unhurried. He noticed the tiny silver star pendant around her neck gleaming against her t-shirt. He found himself studying her, trying to reconcile her quiet demeanor with the fierce passion she'd shown defending her observatory. He had met many environmental activists in his line of work, but they were usually more aggressive, more confrontational. Elara Vance was different. She spoke from a place of deep love, not anger. She returned with 2 chipped ceramic mugs, steam rising from the fragrant tea. "Sugar and milk are over there if you like," she said, setting a mug in front of him. "I like mine plain." "Plain is fine," Liam replied, taking a sip. The tea was warm and soothing. He leaned back, letting his gaze wander around the room. "So, this telescope," he began, pointing to the behemoth in the center. "It's quite old, isn't it?" 120 years old, Alara confirmed, her eyes sparkling. "It was donated by the town's founder, a passionate amateur astronomer. It's a refractor, a classic design. Still works beautifully, better than many modern ones for certain types of viewing." She patted the cool metal casing fondly. "It's seen generations of Oakhaven residents marvel at the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter." "Fascinating," Liam murmured, genuinely intrigued. He was used to dealing with structures, with their materials and their history. But this was a history tied to something far grander than any building. Alara continued, her voice gaining a gentle rhythm as she spoke of her passion. "The stars. They're like ancient stories, written in light. Every point of light has a tale to tell, of creation, of collapse, of unimaginable distances and times. When you look through the eyepiece, you're not just seeing light, you're seeing history, reaching back billions of years." She looked at him, her gaze earnest. "It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? Our small lives, our small town, our small planet. Suddenly, we're part of something infinitely vast and glorious." Liam found himself listening intently, captivated not just by her words, but by the quiet intensity in her eyes. He had always been driven by ambition, by the desire to leave his mark on the world, to build something lasting. But Alara spoke of a different kind of lasting, a legacy of wonder that transcended human creation. "I'm used to thinking about space in terms of usable square footage," Liam admitted with a wry smile. "Not in terms of light years." Alara chuckled, a soft melodic sound. "Well, tonight, we'll try to broaden your perspective a little." She checked her watch. "It's almost time. Let's get the dome open." She led him to a large hand-cranked wheel near the base of the dome. "This is the manual rotator," she explained. "Most modern observatories have automated systems, but here, it's all about elbow grease and a connection to the process." She grasped the wheel. "Want to try?" Liam, ever the engineer, was intrigued. He took the wheel from her, his large hands easily encompassing the worn wood. With a surprisingly smooth motion, he began to turn it. A low rumble echoed through the building as the massive dome slowly began to rotate, revealing a sliver of the darkening sky. "Good strong arms," Alara complimented, a playful glint in her eyes. "Keep going until the slit is pointing roughly southeast. That's where the radiant of the meteor shower will be." Liam continued to turn the wheel, feeling the satisfying resistance of the gears. As the opening widened, the cool night air spilled into the observatory, carrying with it the scent of pine and the promise of cosmic spectacle. He looked up, and for the first time, he felt a genuine sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with building permits or structural integrity. When the dome was in position, Alara moved to the telescope, adjusting its focus and pointing it towards a specific patch of sky. "While we wait for the meteors, let's start with something closer," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Have you ever seen Saturn through a telescope?" Liam shook his head. "Never, only pictures." "Then you're in for a treat." Alara stepped aside, gesturing to the eyepiece. "Go on, look." Liam leaned down, his eye pressed against the cool metal. For a moment, all he saw was a blur of light. Then, Alara gently adjusted a knob, and the fuzzy image snapped into exquisite focus. He gasped. There, suspended in the inky blackness, was a perfect, miniature Saturn. Its golden orb was distinct, and around it, like a delicate halo, floated its magnificent rings, impossibly thin and elegant. He could even discern a faint band of clouds across its surface. It was more vivid, more real than any photograph he had ever seen. It was ithering in front of him, a distant world brought close by human ingenuity and the vastness of space. "Incredible," he breathed, pulling his eye away, a look of profound wonder on his face. He looked at Alara, his steel-gray eyes shining with a new light. It's truly incredible. Elara smiled, a deep, genuine smile that reached her eyes. That's just the beginning. Now, let's get comfortable outside and wait for some shooting stars. They moved out of the observatory, leaving the main door ajar. Elara carried a thick blanket and 2 cushions, setting them down on a small grassy patch a little way from the building, where the view of the sky was widest. The air was cool now, and the chirping of crickets filled the silence. They lay down on the blanket, side by side, their heads propped up on the cushions. The sky above them was a breathtaking panorama, a velvety expanse dusted with countless stars. The Milky Way, a faint, luminous band, stretched across the zenith, a river of light flowing through the cosmic night. Just relax, Elara whispered, her voice soft in the quiet night. Let your eyes adjust. Don't look directly at one spot. Let your gaze wander. The meteors are quick. You might only catch them out of the corner of your eye. Liam did as she instructed, his body slowly relaxing into the soft grass. The stresses of his day, the demands of his project, the noise of the city, all of it seemed to recede, replaced by the vast, silent presence of the universe. He felt a profound sense of peace settling over him, a feeling he hadn't realized he was missing until now. Minutes passed, filled only with the gentle sounds of the night. Then, a streak of light, quick and brilliant, flashed across the sky, leaving a phantom trail in its wake. Did you see that? Elara exclaimed softly, a thrill in her voice. I did, Liam said, a grin spreading across his face. Wow, it's so much faster than I imagined. Another minute later, another one, longer this time, painting a fiery arc before vanishing. That was a good one, Elara murmured, nudging him gently. They're called the Draconids, leftover dust from Comet 21P Giacobini Zinner. She paused. Each one is just a tiny speck of rock or ice, burning up as it enters our atmosphere, a fleeting moment of beauty, then gone. Liam watched, mesmerized, as more meteors streaked across the dark canvas. He found himself searching for them, eagerly anticipating the next flash. He thought about Elara's earlier words, about the observatory being Oakhaven's soul. Lying here under this magnificent sky, he was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about a building or even about science. It was about wonder, about connection, about a sense of belonging to something immeasurably larger than oneself. He turned his head slightly, looking at Elara. Her profile was silhouetted against the starry backdrop, her eyes wide and luminous as she gazed upwards. She looked utterly content, utterly at peace. He found himself studying the delicate curve of her jaw, the way her hair, freed from its braid, framed her face, catching the faint starlight. Elara, he said, his voice a low murmur. She turned to him, her eyes still holding the distant glow of the cosmos. Yes? I really appreciate you showing me this, he said, the words coming from a place of genuine sincerity. It's quite something. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I promise you, I will personally ensure that the Oakhaven Gateway project takes every possible measure to protect this. To protect the dark skies, I'll make sure your concerns are heard and addressed at every level of the design process. Elara looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just the city architect, but a man genuinely moved by the beauty he had witnessed. Her heart, which had been tight with apprehension earlier, began to unfurl, like a delicate blossom, opening to the sun. Thank you, Liam, she said, her voice barely a whisper. That means a lot. Another meteor blazed across the sky, brighter than any before it. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, holding a shared sense of wonder, a nascent spark of understanding. The vast, silent universe above them seemed to draw them closer, two disparate souls brought together by the magic of starlight. The night was still young, and the stories written in the stars were just beginning to unfold. The night was still young, and the stories written in the stars were just beginning to unfold. Elara felt the warmth of Liam's presence beside her, a gentle anchor in the vastness. The quiet hum of the crickets and the distant murmur of a stream were the only sounds breaking the silence, punctuated occasionally by the whisper of the wind through the pines. She turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting his once more. There was a kindness in his eyes, a depth she hadn't expected to find in someone she'd only just met, a silent understanding that seemed to bypass words. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Liam's voice was soft, a low rumble that vibrated through the air between them. He wasn't looking at her now, but back up at the star-dusted canvas, as if giving her space, allowing the moment to breathe. "More than incredible," Alara agreed, her voice still a little breathy from the wonder. "I haven't seen a sky like this in, I don't know how long. City lights drown everything out." She hugged her knees to her chest, pulling the blanket a little tighter around her shoulders. The night air was growing cooler, but she felt a strange reluctance to move. Liam shifted, turning his body slightly towards her. "That's one of the reasons I love it up here. No light pollution for miles. You can almost touch the Milky Way on a clear night." He paused, then added, a hint of something wistful in his tone. "It puts things into perspective, doesn't it?" Alara nodded slowly, gazing up again. The sheer number of stars was dizzying, each one a tiny pinprick of light, a silent testament to the immensity of existence. "It does," she murmured. "Makes my own problems seem smaller, and yet somehow more significant at the same time, like they're part of something much bigger." She thought of the little cottage, the quiet desperation that had driven her here, the hope she was trying to rekindle. "Exactly," Liam said, his voice resonating with her unspoken thoughts. He reached out, not quite touching her, but pointing a finger towards a particularly bright cluster. "See that? That's the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, always one of my favorites." He began to tell her stories about the constellations, tales of ancient gods and heroes, of love and loss etched into the celestial tapestry. His voice was soothing, a gentle balm to her restless spirit, and Alara found herself completely captivated, not just by the stars, but by the quiet passion in his words. He knew so much, not in a showy way, but with a genuine affection for the stories and the science alike. Eventually, the moon began its slow descent, and the chill in the air intensified. "We should probably head inside," Liam suggested, his voice regretful. "In pretty late, and you'll freeze out here." Alara felt a pang of disappointment that the magical interlude was ending, but she knew he was right. She carefully unwrapped herself from the blanket, her muscles a little stiff from sitting still. "Thank you, Liam," she said again, looking up at him as he stood. "For everything. For the window, for the company, for the stars." He offered her a hand, his fingers warm and strong as they closed around hers, helping her to her feet. "My pleasure, Alara. Seriously. It's not often I get to share this view with anyone, let alone someone who appreciates it so much." He didn't let go of her hand immediately, their fingers lingering for a moment longer than strictly necessary, a silent current passing between them. As they walked back towards the cottage, the gravel crunching softly under their feet, the quiet intimacy of the night followed them. The small porch light cast a warm glow, illuminating the rustic wooden door. Inside, Liam moved with an easy familiarity, flicking on a few lamps that cast a soft golden light around the living room. The air was still cool, so he knelt by the stone fireplace, deftly arranging logs and kindling. Soon, a cheerful crackle filled the room, and the scent of burning wood began to permeate the air. "Would you like some tea? Or hot chocolate?" Liam asked, standing and dusting off his hands. "I have some pretty decent peppermint tea, perfect for winding down." "Peppermint tea sounds wonderful, thank you," Alara replied, settling onto a plush armchair by the fire. She watched him move about the small kitchen, which was open to the living area. It was a simple space, yet incredibly charming, filled with handcrafted wooden shelves, neatly stacked jars of spices, and an antique kettle already whistling softly on a small stovetop. The whole cottage felt lived in, loved, and infused with a quiet sense of peace. He returned a few minutes later with 2 steaming mugs, handing one to her before sinking into the opposite armchair. The firelight danced across his face, highlighting the strong lines of his jaw and the thoughtful expression in his eyes. He took a sip of his tea, then looked at her. "So," he began, a gentle curiosity in his tone. "You said you were looking for a fresh start. If you don't mind me asking, what brings you all the way out here?" Alara hesitated, swirling the warm mug between her hands. It was a big question, one she hadn't really articulated fully, even to herself. But something in Liam's gaze, a genuine openness, encouraged her. "It's A bit of a long story, she admitted, a faint smile playing on her lips. The short version is, I was feeling a bit lost. Burnt out, I suppose. I was working in graphic design in the city, long hours, high pressure, always chasing deadlines. And then a relationship ended. Not badly, just, it ran its course. It made me realize I'd been living life on autopilot, letting others define my path. She took a fortifying sip of her tea, the warmth spreading through her chest. I saw this cottage listed for rent online. It looked so completely different from anything I knew. Remote, rustic, quiet. The ad mentioned it needed a bit of love, and I guess I felt like I did too. So, I packed a bag, took a leap of faith, and here I am. She gestured vaguely around the room. Still figuring things out, to be honest. Liam listened intently, his gaze unwavering, absorbing her words without judgment. When she finished, he nodded slowly. That makes a lot of sense. The city can really drain you. There's a different pace of life up here. It forces you to slow down, to notice things you'd normally rush past. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. And the bit of love part, that's where I come in, I suppose? I'm a handyman, for lack of a better term. I live just a few miles down the road, and I look after a few of the older properties in the area for their owners. This one, it belongs to an old couple, the Millers. They're great people, but they're getting on in years and can't manage the upkeep anymore. They love this place, though, and want it to be enjoyed. So you're the guardian of this little haven, Alara mused, a soft smile on her face. That's a lovely job. Liam chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. Something like that. I enjoy it. There's a satisfaction in fixing things, in making something old new again. And the peace and quiet isn't bad either. I grew up around here, moved away for a while, tried the city thing myself. Didn't stick. Came back and realized this is where I belong. He paused, his gaze thoughtful. So, graphic design. That sounds creative. Are you going to keep doing it up here? Alara sighed, a small, wistful sound. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to reinvent myself completely, maybe try something with my hands, something tangible. I used to paint years ago, but I let that fall by the wayside. Or maybe gardening. I've never had a proper garden before. The idea of growing something, nurturing it, watching it bloom, it feels very appealing right now. She looked around the rustic room, the handcrafted elements, the natural materials. This place certainly inspires that kind of thinking. It does, Liam agreed, his eyes sweeping over the room. There's a small patch out back that used to be a vegetable garden. It's overgrown now, but the soil's good, and the light is perfect. He took another sip of his tea. And painting? That's a wonderful skill to have. There's no shortage of inspiration around here. The mountains, the lake, the forests, the light changes every hour. They talked for what felt like hours, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls, the only sounds the gentle crackle of the flames, and the soft murmur of their voices. Alara found herself opening up to Liam in a way she hadn't to anyone in a long time. She spoke of her childhood dreams, her quiet anxieties about the future, the feeling of being adrift. Liam, in turn, shared stories of growing up in the quiet mountain town, his adventures exploring the wilderness, his decision to return and embrace a simpler life. He had a groundedness about him, a quiet strength that felt immensely comforting. At one point, Alara shivered slightly, even with the warmth of the fire. Liam noticed instantly. "Are you cold?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. He stood up, retrieved the wool blanket they had used earlier from the porch, and gently draped it over her shoulders. His fingers brushed her hair as he did so, a fleeting electric touch that sent a shiver through her, but this time it wasn't from the cold. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the blanket tighter, the scent of wood smoke and crisp night air clinging to it. It smelled faintly of him. "You're welcome," he said, his voice a little softer than before. He sat back down, but this time, he angled his chair even more towards hers, their knees almost touching. The distance between them seemed to shrink, filled with unspoken understanding. As the tea cooled and the fire began to dwindle, casting a gentler glow, a comfortable silence settled between them. Alara felt a profound sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The knot of anxiety that had resided in her chest for so long seemed to have loosened, replaced by a soft, hopeful warmth. Finally, Liam checked his watch. It's well past midnight. I should probably let you get some rest. You've had a long day. He stood, and Alara reluctantly followed suit. I suppose so, she said, wishing the night didn't have to end. Thank you again, Liam, for everything. You've made my first night here feel less daunting, more welcoming. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Anytime, Alara. I'll be back in the morning to finish up the window and check on a few other things. Maybe I can show you that garden patch I mentioned? I'd like that very much, Alara said, her heart fluttering a little at the prospect of seeing him again so soon. He walked her to the bedroom door, standing in the doorway. Sleep well, Alara. And don't worry, that window will be fully secure by tomorrow. I know it will, she replied, a newfound trust in her voice. Good night, Liam. Good night, he echoed, his gaze lingering on her for a moment before he turned and quietly let himself out of the cottage. Alara closed the door softly, leaning against it for a moment. The cottage felt different now. No longer just a temporary refuge, but a place that held the echo of shared laughter, quiet conversation, and a nascent connection. She looked around the simply furnished room, the warm glow of the fire still faintly visible through the open doorway to the living room. She felt a lightness in her step as she moved to the bed, pulling back the covers. As she lay down, she could still feel the lingering warmth of the blanket Liam had placed around her, and the faint scent of wood smoke and pine. The image of the star-filled sky and Liam's kind, understanding eyes were the last things in her mind before sleep claimed her. Windmill. The morning light, soft and golden, filtered through the curtains, waking Alara gently. For a moment, she lay still, a sense of unfamiliar peace settling over her. The usual city anxieties were absent, replaced by a quiet anticipation. She stretched, feeling the pleasant ache in her muscles from the previous day's travel and the late-night stargazing. She dressed in comfortable clothes and made her way to the kitchen. The cottage felt different in the daylight, brighter, more rustic, filled with the promise of a new day. A faint scent of wood smoke still lingered in the air, a pleasant reminder of the night before. She brewed herself a cup of instant coffee she'd brought, promising herself she'd get proper coffee supplies soon, and stepped out onto the small porch. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The sun was already high enough to cast long shadows from the trees, and the world was alive with the chirping of birds. She took a deep breath, letting the clean air fill her lungs, and felt a quiet sense of belonging beginning to take root. She was just finishing her coffee when she heard the familiar rumble of a truck approaching. Her heart gave a little flutter. Liam. He pulled up in a sturdy-looking pickup truck, its bed filled with tools and various supplies. He climbed out, a thermos in one hand, a tool belt slung over his shoulder. He was wearing a worn flannel shirt and sturdy jeans, looking perfectly at home in the natural surroundings. Morning, Alara, he called out, a warm smile on his face. Sleep well? Morning, Liam. Like a log. Thank you, she replied genuinely. It's beautiful out here this morning. It is, he agreed, walking towards the porch. I brought some real coffee this time, and a couple of fresh muffins from the bakery in town. Thought you might appreciate it. He held up a small paper bag. Alara's smile widened. You are truly a lifesaver. I was just contemplating my instant coffee predicament. They sat on the porch steps, sipping rich, dark coffee from Liam's thermos mugs and sharing the still warm blueberry muffins. The conversation flowed easily, picking up where it had left off the night before. Liam told her more about the local area, the best hiking trails, the hidden swimming spots in the lake, the small general store in the nearest town. Alara found herself picturing these places, a gentle excitement building within her. After breakfast, Liam got to work on the window. He was efficient and methodical, explaining each step as he went, showing her how the new pane would be secured and sealed. Alara watched, fascinated by his skill and the quiet competence with which he handled his tools. He seemed to embody the spirit of the cottage itself, sturdy, reliable, and deeply connected to the natural world. There, he said finally, wiping his hands on a rag. All done. Should be completely watertight now, and secure. He tested the latch, which now closed with a satisfying click. It's perfect, Liam. Thank you, Alara said, genuinely grateful. The room already felt more complete, more protected. "No problem at all," he replied, gathering his tools. "Now, about that garden patch." He led her around the side of the cottage to a small, sun-drenched area at the back. It was indeed overgrown, a tangle of weeds and tall grasses, but Alara could see the faint outlines of raised beds beneath the wild growth. "This is it," Liam said, gesturing with a sweep of his hand. "It's a bit of a project, but it's got good bones. The Millers used to grow the most amazing tomatoes and herbs here." Alara knelt, running her fingers through the rich, dark soil that peeked through the weeds. A faint, earthy scent rose to greet her. "It feels good," she murmured, a spark of excitement igniting within her. "I've never really gardened before. Not properly. It feels a bit daunting." "It's not as hard as you think," Liam reassured her, kneeling beside her. "It's mostly about patience and understanding what the land wants. I can help you get it started if you like. Clear out the worst of the weeds, turn the soil. We could even build some new raised beds if you're up for it." Alara looked at him, her heart swelling with a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. His offer wasn't just about the garden. It was about companionship, about helping her put down roots, quite literally. "I'd love that, Liam," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'd really, really love that." He smiled, a genuine, open smile that made her breath catch. "Great, we can start tomorrow if you're ready. I've got some spare tools I can lend you." They spent the rest of the morning walking around the property, Liam pointing out different plants, identifying bird songs, and showing her the path down to a small, crystal-clear stream that ran through the back of the land. He spoke of the seasons, the way the landscape transformed, the rhythm of life in the mountains. Alara listened, absorbing every word, feeling a profound sense of connection to this place and to the man guiding her through it. She found herself imagining what it would be like to experience all these changes with him, to learn from him, to share in the quiet beauty he so clearly cherished. As midday approached, Liam announced he had to head back to his place for a bit, to pick up some materials for another job. "But I'll be back this afternoon," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "We could explore that hiking trail I mentioned, if you're up for it. It's a gentle one, takes you to a lovely lookout point." "I like that very much," Alara replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. The prospect of an afternoon spent exploring with Liam, of discovering more about this beautiful new world and the kind man who inhabited it, filled her with a sense of hopeful anticipation. The fresh start she craved was beginning to unfold, not just in the quiet solitude she'd imagined, but in the unexpected warmth of a growing connection, a story written not just in the stars, but in the gentle rhythm of a mountain morning. She felt a lightness in her step as she watched him drive away, already looking forward to his return. Liam returned 2 days later, not with a sturdy pickup truck, but with a worn forest green Jeep, its canvas top rolled back to reveal the brilliant blue sky. Alara was tending to the small patch of wildflowers near her cabin, a new habit she'd picked up, when she heard the distinct rumble of an engine. She straightened, a smile already curving her lips as he pulled up. "Good morning, Alara," he called, his voice warm as sunshine. He stepped out carrying a small wicker basket. "Thought you might appreciate a proper mountain breakfast after all that unpacking." Her heart gave a little flutter. "Liam, you didn't have to." But her eyes gleamed with pleasure. "Though I certainly won't say no. My proper mountain breakfast so far has consisted of instant coffee and a granola bar." He chuckled, a rich, comforting sound. "Then it's high time we remedied that." He gestured towards the small porch that wrapped around her cabin. "Mind if I set up here?" They spread a checkered blanket on the worn wooden floor, and Liam unpacked an array of treats, freshly baked sourdough bread from the local bakery, a jar of homemade blackberry jam, thick slices of smoked ham, and a thermos of steaming, locally roasted coffee. As they ate, perched on the porch steps, the morning sun filtering through the towering pines, Alara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. "This is incredible," she murmured, savoring a bite of bread and jam. "You really went all out." "It's nothing," he said, but his eyes were soft as he watched her. "Just wanted to show you a bit of what this place has to offer." He paused, then added, "And spent some more time getting to know my new neighbor." They talked for hours that morning. Liam told her about his family's history in the valley, generations of loggers and craftsmen who had helped build the very cabins nestled in the hills. He spoke of his own work, restoring antique furniture, breathing new life into forgotten pieces. There was a quiet pride in his voice, a deep reverence for the past and for the artistry of skilled hands. Elara found herself opening up, telling him about her demanding marketing job in the city, the relentless pace, the constant pressure, the feeling of being a cog in a giant, impersonal machine. She described the moment she realized she was utterly depleted, her creativity drained, her spirit dulled. It was like waking up one day and realizing I'd been running on empty for years, she confessed, looking out at the distant peaks. I just needed quiet and space to remember who I was. Liam listened intently, his gaze unwavering. And have you found it? He asked gently. She met his eyes, a tentative smile forming. I think I'm starting to, especially in mornings like this. Before he left, Liam suggested a hike for the following day, to a waterfall he knew, hidden deep within the woods. It's a bit of a climb, but the view is worth it, he promised. Elara readily agreed, her heart light. The thought of exploring with Liam, of discovering more about this beautiful new world, and the kind man who inhabited it, filled her with a sense of hopeful anticipation. The fresh start she craved was beginning to unfold, not just in the quiet solitude she'd imagined, but in the unexpected warmth of a growing connection, a story written not just in the stars, but in the gentle rhythm of a mountain morning. She felt a lightness in her step as she watched him drive away, already looking forward to his return. The waterfall hike was everything Liam promised and more. The air grew cooler as they ascended, the scent of damp earth and pine needles filling Elara's lungs. Liam moved with an easy grace, pointing out different trees, identifying bird song, and sharing local legends about the trails. When they finally reached the falls, a shimmering curtain of water tumbling over moss-covered rocks into a crystal-clear pool, Elara gasped. It's breathtaking, she whispered, feeling a profound sense of wonder. Liam stood beside her, his presence a comforting warmth. It's one of my favorite spots, he said, his voice soft. Feels like a secret, doesn't it? They spent hours there picnicking on sandwiches and apples, talking about everything and nothing. Elara learned that Liam had a younger sister, Clara, who lived a few valleys over and was a talented potter. He spoke of his parents, both gone now, with a gentle fondness that spoke of a life well lived and loved. He admitted that while he cherished his solitude, he sometimes missed having someone to share these moments with. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows through the trees, they started their descent. The easy camaraderie between them had deepened into something more profound, a sense of shared intimacy that went beyond mere friendship. When they reached Elara's cabin, the porch light glowing a welcoming beacon, Liam turned to her. I had a wonderful day, Elara, he said, his eyes reflecting the fading light. Me too, Liam, she replied, her voice a little breathy. Her gaze lingered on his lips, and a shiver, not of cold, ran through her. He must have seen the unspoken question in her eyes, for he took a small step closer. His hand reached out, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking softly. Her breath hitched. His eyes, the color of warm honey, searched hers, asking permission. She leaned into his touch, her own hand rising to rest on his arm. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. His lips, soft and hesitant at first, met hers. It was a gentle kiss, tender and sweet, a sigh of connection rather than a rush of passion. It tasted of mountain air and pine, of quiet understanding and blossoming hope. When he finally pulled away, a soft flush crept up her neck. Good night, Elara, he murmured, his voice a little rough. Good night, Liam, she managed, her heart thrumming. She watched him walk to his jeep, and this time, as he drove away, a new warmth bloomed in her chest, a certainty that this connection was real, precious, and something she wanted to nurture. Over the next few weeks, their lives began to intertwine seamlessly. Liam would stop by with fresh eggs from a neighbor's farm or a basket of late-season berries. Elara, inspired by her peaceful surroundings, began to sketch again, filling notebooks with charcoal landscapes and delicate floral studies. She'd always loved art, but the city had stifled that part of her. Now it flowed freely, a balm to her soul. She showed Liam some of her sketches, feeling surprisingly vulnerable. He admired them genuinely, his praise heartfelt. He helped her fix a leaky faucet in her cabin, bringing his tools and his patient expertise. She, in turn, cooked him dinner, a simple pasta dish, but made with fresh herbs from her tiny burgeoning garden. They shared stories late into the evenings, warmed by the crackling fire in her stone fireplace. She told him about her ill-fated engagement, the slow realization that her ex-fiancé valued his career above all else, leaving her feeling unseen and unloved. It wasn't dramatic, she explained, stirring her tea. Just a quiet fading, like a plant not getting enough light. I realized I was shrinking, making myself smaller to fit into his life, and I didn't want that anymore. Liam listened without judgment, his hand finding hers, offering a silent comfort that spoke volumes. "You deserve to shine, Alara," he said, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "And this place, it feels like it's helping you do just that." One sunny afternoon, Liam took her to the small, quaint town nestled at the base of the mountains. It was a charming place with a general store, a bakery, a library, and a handful of artisan shops. He introduced her to Mrs. Henderson, the sweet, silver-haired woman who ran the local bookstore, and to old Mr. Davies, the gruff but kind owner of the hardware store. They all greeted Liam like a beloved son, and their warm reception of Alara made her feel instantly more at home. She even met Clara, Liam's sister, whose pottery studio was a haven of earthy beauty. Clara, with her bright, inquisitive eyes and easy laugh, immediately took to Alara, inviting her for tea and a pottery lesson. As Alara started to sink her roots deeper into the community, a small tremor of doubt began to ripple beneath her newfound peace. It wasn't about Liam. Their connection felt increasingly solid, a growing tapestry of shared laughter, quiet understanding, and tender touches. They'd kissed often since that first night, each kiss deepening, growing more passionate, revealing a physical connection that was as exhilarating as it was comforting. The doubt stemmed from an email she received, tucked away in her spam folder, from her old boss, Marcus. It was an offer, a project that was right up her alley, with a significant pay raise and the promise of a promotion. He'd heard through the grapevine that she was taking a sabbatical and wanted to tempt her back. She stared at the words on her screen, a knot forming in her stomach. The city, with its relentless pace and demanding expectations, felt like a distant nightmare. Yet, a tiny part of her, the part that had always valued ambition and professional achievement, felt a flicker of temptation. It wasn't that she missed the work itself, but the validation, the sense of purpose that came from a high-stakes career. Was she truly ready to leave that behind forever? Was choosing a quiet life in the mountains, a life of sketching and gardening and quiet moments with Liam, enough? She didn't tell Liam about the email immediately. She mulled it over for days, her usually bright spirits a little dimmed. She found herself retreating slightly, her conversations with Liam becoming a little less open. He noticed, of course. Liam was perceptive. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues, Liam turned to her. "Is everything all right, Alara?" His voice was gentle, laced with concern. "You seem distant lately, like something's weighing on you." Alara hesitated, then took a deep breath. She pulled out her phone and showed him the email. "My old boss," she explained, her voice tight. "He wants me back. A big project, more money, a promotion." Liam read it, his expression unreadable. He handed the phone back to her, then took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "And what do you think?" he asked, his voice soft, devoid of judgment or pressure. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. I don't know, Liam. A part of me feels like I should consider it. All those years I worked so hard, built my career. To just let it go, it feels a little like giving up." She paused, then confessed. "And sometimes, I worry. Is this life enough? Am I enough in this life? I've always been defined by my achievements, by what I studied." Liam squeezed her hand. "Alara," he began, his gaze steady and warm. "You came here to find yourself, didn't you? To remember who you are, not just what you do. And from what I've seen, you're blossoming here. Your art, your garden, the way you've started to connect with people. That's not giving up. That's choosing a different kind of life, a richer one perhaps. One where you're defined by your spirit, your kindness, your creativity." not just by a job title. He paused, then continued, his voice earnest. And as for enough, you are more than enough, Alara. You're extraordinary. If you go back to the city, you'd be going back to a life that drained you, that made you feel small. Here, you're vibrant. You're happy. He gestured to the mountains surrounding them, bathed in the soft twilight. This place, this life, it suits you. And, he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, his eyes locking with hers, we suit each other. His words, spoken with such genuine conviction and love, resonated deep within her. The anxieties that had been swirling around her heart began to dissipate, replaced by a profound sense of clarity. He saw her, truly saw her, beyond the professional accolades, beyond the past expectations. He saw the woman she was becoming, the woman she wanted to be. You're right, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes, tears of relief and gratitude. You're absolutely right. She turned to him fully, wrapping her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. I don't want to go back. I don't want to leave any of this. Liam held her close, his arms strong and comforting around her. You don't have to, Alara, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. You're home now. That night, Alara drafted a polite but firm email declining Marcus's offer. As she hit send, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a final, decisive step away from her past and towards her future. She looked at Liam, who was watching her with a gentle smile. A wave of love, pure and overwhelming, washed over her. Their relationship deepened exponentially after that. The small challenge had solidified their bond, proving their ability to navigate difficult conversations with honesty and support. They talked about the future, not just hypothetically, but with a growing sense of shared purpose. They spoke of expanding her garden, of him building her a dedicated art studio, of the quiet joys of a life lived together in the mountains. One crisp autumn morning a few months later, Liam woke Alara before dawn. Dress warmly, he whispered, his eyes sparkling with a secret. I have something to show you. Curiosity piqued, Alara bundled up in her warmest sweater and jacket. Liam led her through the still dark woods, the air crisp and cold, carrying the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. He held her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin, a comforting anchor in the pre-dawn gloom. They walked for about 20 minutes, ascending a winding path Alara hadn't explored before. Finally, they emerged onto a small, flat clearing atop a rocky outcrop. Below them, the valley was still shrouded in mist, a soft, ethereal blanket. Above, the sky was a deep indigo, slowly lightening at the horizon. Liam stopped her gently, turning her to face him. His eyes, in the faint light, were earnest and full of a love that made her heart ache with joy. Alara, he began, his voice a little shaky, when you first arrived, I saw a woman who was lost, searching for something she couldn't quite name, and watching you find your way here, find your peace, find your light, it's been the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box, intricately carved with mountain motifs. Alara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes welled up, and a tear traced a path down her cold cheek. He opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a ring. It wasn't a flashy diamond, but a simple, elegant band of hammered silver, set with a single, luminous moonstone, its milky depths reflecting the dawnlight. This stone, Liam explained, his voice tender, is said to represent new beginnings, inner growth, and intuition. It felt right for you, for us. He met her gaze, his own filled with a raw, honest emotion that stole her breath. Alara, I love you, more than I ever thought possible. This cabin, these mountains, this life, it feels like home, but only because you're in it. Will you do me the honor of building a life with me? Tears streamed freely down Alara's face now, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. Her heart felt so full it might burst. The fresh start she'd craved had blossomed into something infinitely more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about solitude anymore. It was about shared joy, shared dreams, and a love that felt as deep and enduring as the mountains themselves. Yes, Liam, she choked out, her voice trembling. 1,000 times yes. He let out a relieved laugh, sliding the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, cool and smooth against her skin. Then, he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that warmed her to her core. It was a kiss that sealed their past, celebrated their present, and promised an extraordinary future. As the first rays of the sun finally peeked over the highest peaks, painting the sky in glorious shades of pink, orange, and gold, they stood embraced, watching the world awaken beneath them. The mist in the valley began to burn off, revealing the patchwork of forests and meadows, the winding river, and the tiny, welcoming lights of the distant town. Elara leaned her head against Liam's shoulder, her moonstone ring gleaming in the nascent light. She had come to the mountains, seeking peace, seeking herself. She had found both, and so much more. She had found a home, not just in a place, but in the heart of a good man. Her story, once paused, was now being written anew, chapter by beautiful chapter, in the gentle rhythm of a mountain morning, and in the unwavering warmth of a love that promised to last a lifetime. She closed her eyes, feeling utterly, completely content, ready for whatever wonderful adventures their shared future would bring.